We'd like to inform all board meeting attendees that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. This meeting is open to the public in accordance with Phase 5 guidance issued by the Illinois Department of Public Health and the Illinois State Board of Education. Individuals are required to wear a face covering at all times properly while in the building, including during the meeting. The capacity in any room is limited to attendees being spaced a minimum of 6 feet apart. A COVID-19 screening will be conducted for all attendees. And I'm going to add that we need to have everybody in compliance with the mask mandate. If we look and we see that there are people not wearing their masks properly or taking their masks off, we will take a recess until everyone's in compliance. If it continues and we continue to have issues, we will adjourn the meeting and reconvene virtually at a later date. So if we could now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And a roll call, please.
Mrs. Witt.
Here.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Here.
Mrs. Junk.
Here.
Mr. Carey.
Ryan.
Here.
Dr. Lawler.
Here.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Here.
Mrs. Simmons.
Here.
With 7 members present, we have a quorum. So now we're on the consideration of moving consent agenda items to new business. Are there board members who would like to move anything? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. The approval of the agenda tonight is as amended. There were some clerical corrections to the resignations and employment of staff. So I'm looking for a motion now to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Ryan?
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. And we are now at the Board Superintendent salutes, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Wade.
Yes, thank you. Shared a little bit at the last board meeting about our work that we do with our friends, students with special needs in Kaneland School District. And with that, I would like to take a second to salute Mrs. Fran Eggleston, who is our Director of Special Education. I will ask her if she would come up to the microphone, and she will share with us the experience of Elburn Days with our students with special needs and the cooperative group effort to make it a great experience for them. So first of all, I'd like to salute Mrs. Eggleston for her work that she does, and then the group that she's about to introduce.
Thank you so much. I really enjoy working alongside the Elburn Lions. This is probably our 5th year that we have done this. This past year, the Elburn Lions not only sought out the students that attend Kaneland schools, but they opened up to the Mid-Valley Special Ed co-op classes as well. So this year we anticipated approximately 300 family members. We ended up with probably close to 200, representing 40 families. And I do want to acknowledge, one, the Elburn Lions, and thank them very much for this wonderful event on behalf of our students and surrounding students, along with specifically Joe Krzyzak, who is the head lion that works with the special needs wristband session, and then most especially to the Skinner's, their amusement, their Skinner amusement. They donate their time for the amount of time that they're there. So the session opened at 9 o'clock in the morning and went until 12 noon. From 9 until 10, We offered a variety of carnival-like activities. We partnered with the Kaneland Hope class, so many of our students came out and supported the families while they were at the carnival. And then from 10 to 12, the rides opened. And once again, that was Skinner's who donated their time. So we are very, very fortunate to be able to partner with the Elburn Lions. I'm just a conduit to help them achieve the goal of meeting the special needs families. So I enjoyed it. It was really hot, but everybody had a great time. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Eggleston.
Thank you.
And then the only other salute would probably be just an ongoing salute that we're going to have at just about every meeting moving forward, just the amount of work and time and effort and energy on behalf of the district, our staff, our parents, and our families to make a challenging year a successful year at the same time. So that will probably be a standing salute item for the remainder of the year. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Dr. Fuchs, do you have anything?
That's
Anyone
fine,
else?
thank you.
Okay. This is the first opportunity for public comment. The board values public input to inform our decision-making and to provide information and insight into what is happening throughout the district. Board meetings are held to conduct the business of the Board of Education and are required by law to take place in public. However, they are not public forums. We use the public comment section as an opportunity to listen to our stakeholders. For that reason, the board does not enter into a debate or respond to questions spontaneously or without proper investigation and deliberation. In most cases, concerns or questions requiring follow-up will be referred to the superintendent. If you choose to speak publicly, we ask that you do so at the microphone, state your name and the village of residence or your association with us for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less so that all who wish to speak may have that opportunity. Public comment is a maximum of 30 minutes with a 20-minute total length of time for any one subject. You are encouraged to seek a private appointment to discuss matters concerning individual students or staff members. While public education can be an emotional issue, and understandably so, the board strives to maintain a certain level of decorum at the meeting. Those who speak are expected to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility. And we do require a sign-up to speak, and I will call the people in order that they signed up. So the first speaker tonight is Lisa Tingler.
Yes, and this one was due to a medical reason. Mrs. Tingler, Dr. Tingler was unable to attend, so I'm going to read on her behalf. Good evening. My name is Dr. Lisa Tingler. I wanted to thank the district administration for requiring universal masking before Governor Pritzker put his mask mandate in. I also want to thank the district administration and school board for relooking at the lunch setup for Harder Middle School and figuring out a way to space the tables more to make lunch a little safer for the students. It isn't perfect, but it's a better solution. I'm glad that when it comes down to the district, we'll try to put the health and welfare of the students, teachers, and staff first. However, I would like to see the district become more proactive when making these health decisions for our district. I've heard of instances where students, parents in the school, substitutes, and some staff members are not wearing a proper mask based on the CDC guidelines, or they're wearing it incorrectly. I would like to see the district be more proactive on checking masks of the people who come into their school buildings. I would like to see the district promote and educate on shield testing so more people can sign up to use that tool. Early detection of COVID could prevent the whole school from having to go remote. I'm also hoping the district will address how they are going to handle large events at the schools, like football games. Will the people in the stands need to wear a mask now under the governor's mandate, even though it is outside and it is a large crowd? How will you make sure quarantined students don't show up at these events or other school activities? Please be proactive when making health decisions. It will help the people under your watch stay healthy. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Dr. Lisa Tingler.
Okay, the second speaker is Luke Sharp.
Thank you. My name is Luke Sharp. I've got 3 kids in the district. I'm from
We
Sugar
need to
Grove.
ask you to put your mask up, sorry.
3 kids in the district. Why is John Shields being held to a different standard than the rest of the schools in the district and now requiring a mask outside? Absolutely unacceptable and is not backed by any scientific data. None. Our kids have a God-given right to fresh air. Who is responsible for my kids' persistent headaches when they come home from school after wearing a muzzle for 8 hours? What kind of psychological damage are we doing to our children by forcing them to cover their faces? Teaching them that the air is toxic and that everyone around them is sick? Have you wondered about the health effects of forcing kids to breathe through masks that are soaked with sweat, germs, snot, and dirt? What about kids learning to read in class who cannot see the teachers enunciating the words? What does masking do to a child's developing immune system? Last time I was here, I spoke about mask mandates. You guys had a chance to put an end to it, but failed miserably, and I said more nonsense would be on the way. I informed you that a government gets its power from the people, but instead you allow a top-down tyrannical approach, and the sheep follow blindly. And now the governor of Illinois, loophole or not, and without legislative authority, is imposing more mandates on the people of Illinois. You know what's coming next? All kids must get the jab. The people who scream, "Trust the science," are now mad because those unwilling to follow the illegal mandates are declining based on the science. Getting pinned into a hypocritical corner is a never-ending feat only possible by those who lack the ability to think for themselves. Dr. Kary Mullis, who was the winner of a Nobel Peace Prize in 1993 and inventor of the PCR test, said that the entire world is now using his PCR test to diagnose COVID, but it was never designed to find a virus. The whole basis of the pandemic is hinged on a faulty test. Fauci even admitted that the testing process is misleading. Why is the CDC quietly abandoning the existing PCR test for COVID on December 31st, 2021? Why were there few, if any, flu cases in 2020? Did the flu disappear? If you keep pushing these mandates, be aware of the following. The swine flu in 1976 had 45 million people vaxxed and 53 deaths, and the vaccination program was immediately halted. Why do I bring this up? Current day COVID, roughly 203 million vaxxed. The CDC VAERS reporting system is reporting over 595,000 adverse reactions and over 13,000 deaths as of today. Mind you, this is only about 1% of what's reported. What is it? Your pride, your vanity, your ego? Maybe it's fear of losing a pension, recognition status, or maybe the loss of state and federal funding that is clouding your judgment. I suggest you start to dig deep and begin to ask God for guidance. Bottom line, there is a political agenda behind it. We are done asking permission from you, the public servants. You work for us. You can wear 2 masks, 3 masks, put up plexiglass, wear gloves, or get the vax. It doesn't matter to me. We, the parents, have a choice for our children. We do not consent. Did you read the Nuremberg Code yet? I suggest you do. Stand in the gap and quit being weak. Stand up for the children. A quote from Thomas Paine, "Tyranny like hell is not easily conquered, yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph." God bless you all. Thank you.
The next speaker is Scott Stahlke.
My name's Scott Stahlke. I live in Sugar Grove. I got 3 kids in the district. I realize you guys are in a tough spot with the governor's mandates and the ISBE threats, etc. But I want to raise some concerns as a parent. We received an email to parents at 7:29 this morning from our principal, McCoy, at John Shields, with News You Can Use newsletter that we normally receive on a Friday. In this email, tucked away in a link, it's new mask requirements for John Shields. Requirements from the email: mask required at recess, but recess aides remove their mask at recess. So how is the double jeopardy applied? Recess area zones are now re-implemented. Kids cannot play with their friends. Kids do not get mask break at recess. Kids are no longer playing with anything they want at recess. The requirements are absurd given the high heat outside with no opportunity for break, but yet the teachers and staff and aides are able to take breaks throughout the day. At a minimum, they should be asking students if they need a break. To not do that is almost negligence. Parents were told that the mandate at the elementary school in the district was only at John Shields. Other parents were told it was district-wide at all elementary schools. What is correct? The CDC has not issued any revisions. Why are we getting new requirements? KCHD didn't issue any new information. Why are we getting new requirements? I'll go back to the mask break. Why is it that a student must request a break? Why are they not offered a break? Teachers, staff can go in their office, get a break when there's no kids in their classroom. They can go be alone at times for lunch, etc., and take their own breaks. The students do not get that luxury. So I ask you as the teachers, the school board, the superintendent, any party to the district, when you get a new mandate, a new requirement, do push back in writing asking questions of these entities, these boards, these counties, these health departments. Ask them for the facts. To not do that is a real problem. There should be no hesitation in giving you facts to support their decision and their mandates. If they can't do it, then you owe us, the public, a duty of responsibility to push back. Thank you.
The next speaker is Crystal Adams.
I'm going to talk really fast. Good evening. My name is Crystal Adams. I have one Kaneland grad and 2 other students in the district, and not only am I here on their behalf, but on behalf of all the kids who don't feel like they have a say about what happens to their bodies or have control over how their mental health is affected. I cannot deny my heartbreak for my children and the children of the district when I saw that you went back on the approved Return to Learn plan to require masking in school. This truly creates distrust between the parents and the administration. There's no authority to enforce this, and it is not an effective mitigation strategy. There's no studies to prove masking kids all day is effective and safe, no studies to show long-term effects on children for masking. There are, however, numerous studies that prove masking is extremely harmful. What we do know for sure is that suicides in kids under 18 has almost tripled in the last 18 months. This requirement of yours could be directly killing children. Yet COVID does not have anywhere near the effect on children's mortality. It's statistically insignificant in comparison to suicide. Where is your logic here? In fact, the vaccine itself seems to be more of a morbidity and mortality concern than the virus. According to the CDC VAERS database, there have been, and this was a few days ago, 505,131 adverse events reported due to the COVID vaccine. It's estimated that only 10%, or as he said, 1% events are reported, meaning the real number is over 5 million. Potentially 5 million people have had bad reactions or death due to this vaccine. In comparison, the DTaP vaccine, which also has one of the highest rates of adverse reaction, has 56,259 adverse events reported. 56,000 compared to 500,000. Come on, the masks are not what you should be focused on, nor should it be to push an agenda or obviously dangerous vaccine. Education, and only education, should be your focus. Speaking of education, pushing this unlawful vaccine mandate could cost our community to lose some amazing teachers. I personally know teachers willing to sacrifice their careers to stand up for what is right. Enforcing experimental medical procedures on our teachers is illegal, wrong, immoral, discriminatory, and bullying. Our teachers are smart. They can make their own decisions about their health care. There is already a teacher shortage, and if you enforce this ridiculous mandate, our kids are the ones who suffer again. How much suffering are you going to put our kids through? This is enough. This needs to end now. In this very school, our students are seeing a presentation about bullying this week. On the slideshow, our children will see Kaneland says bullying is using peer pressure to isolate a target or to threaten. This is interesting to me because this is exactly what you, school board, are doing. You are isolating unvaccinated people, no matter what their reason is for not vaccinating. You are threatening our teachers. Here is a perfect example. I got a call last night that my high school daughter was exposed to COVID on the bus, and we need to stay home today. My daughter wore a mask on the
You
bus.
need to wrap it up in the next couple of seconds.
If
Your time's
masks
up.
work, why does she have to quarantine? In addition, my daughter was on the bus for 7 minutes. But the person who sat next to the COVID positive person was in school today. My daughter has to stay home for 2 weeks. This is discrimination. This is wrong.
Next speaker is Katie Maxwell.
My name is Katie Maxwell, and my son prepared a speech tonight to address the board. I asked him if he would read it to me because he's nervous to speak in public, and so am I. He told me, "Mom, I'm afraid to read it in public because the board members may target me and single me out in school and be discriminated against by them." My son's 13. It breaks my heart that these are the feelings that are even in his head. I told him that if he's really that nervous, that he does not have to speak. However, I, of course, would be super proud as his mom that he is standing up for his beliefs and his freedom of choice. There is nothing to fear but fear itself. I am here tonight to answer a question from the board meeting held July 26th to the board member who asked in front of all of us, "Yes, but do we trust the parents?" My answer, ma'am, is yes, you do. I've got 3 inches worth of facts, not political facts, facts on the masks and on the vaccine. At July 26th meeting, it was voted our district would be mask optional. As soon as the governor announced his recommendation for the mask mandate, you guys buckled. House Bill 2789 did not pass. He is trying to sneak in another bill naturally, because that's what he does. He lacks the authority to enforce the mandate. He cited the Illinois Constitution and Illinois Emergency Management Agency as his authority to enforce the mandate. If you look, and I've got the websites if you need them, see Section 11. He's got no unilateral authority has been granted. He also referenced Section 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, 7.8, 7.12, and 7.19. There is no 7.19, just so you know. The Illinois Emergency Management Agency has no enforcement mechanisms. They do not give the governor authority to create new regulations. As far as the fear factor, he sent letters to many districts threatening liability. There is no legal liability for ignoring a non-legal binding mandate. Loss of recognition. ISB cannot strip a school's recognition for ignoring non-legal binding mandate. Article 10 of the Illinois Constitution requires free elementary and secondary education. To pursue this, it would be a logistical nightmare. Funding ISB can, in limited circumstances, sanction a school for complying with the mandate under the umbrella of the school code. Ignoring a non-legal binding mandate does not meet that threshold. House Bill 4135 will give him that authority. We cannot let that pass. I, along with many others, watched the ISB meeting on August 18th. We were praying and hoping we would see someone there, someone from our district, to stand up to the bully, to represent the community that you serve. Someone stand up to the bully. Fight for yourself. Fight for the students and the community you serve. I am disappointed that you would so easily give up local control, allowing this joke of a mandate to even be part of the new normal. It is not normal. Wearing a face diaper is not normal. Separating children is not normal.
You need to finish up in the next second or two. Thanks.
I've got 2 seconds left. Masks are physically and psychologically dangerous. It decreases your oxygen intake. It shuts down your immune system because it increases carbon dioxide and toxin intake while decreasing the oxygen, putting your body under stress, releasing cortisone, which shuts down the immunity process. Remember that the virus has a 99.998 survival rate. The masks stayed on the box. They don't prevent this. And I am almost done. I am almost done. Give me 1 second, please. Children are not allowed mask breaks, just so you know. Some teachers do, some do not. That's not okay. I told my children, if you need to breathe, you pull your mask down and you breathe. I will deal with your teacher and I will deal with the referral. So I'm asking you to do your research, take off your rose-colored glasses and join the multitude of districts standing up against the unlawful mandate issued by the governor. Stand up to ISB, don't let them bully you. If you fight, we will fight with you.
Okay, you
And
need to be
lastly,
done.
I implore you not to force the teachers to receive an experimental vaccine.
The next speaker is Stephen Maxwell.
Hello, Kaneland District 302. My name is Stephen Maxwell. I'm an 8th grader here at Kaneland Harder Middle School. I used to be proud to be a knight, but now I feel ashamed. I feel like I'm a threat and I'm the reason we have to wear these masks. I love going outside for PE because I can finally see my friends' faces. When we are inside, I feel like I go unnoticed and no one can see my face. I just wish you would take a minute to realize what you're doing to the kids, parents, and families, and everyone else affected because the governor threatens you. I know this is your job and your hands are tied, but you need to stand up for your district. I know the governor put a mandate, but look at the legal authority. He has no rights.
The next speaker is Garrett Oros.
Good evening. My name is Garrett Orris. I live in Sugar Grove, and I have a first grade at John Shields Elementary. I chose to speak tonight because I'm disappointed in the leadership of both John Shields and the district that are going to mandate masks for students when playing outside at recess. To my knowledge, and this is based on emails I received from Kaneland, I've counted roughly 10 students at John Shields that have tested positive between August 16th and today, August 30th. That's a positivity rate of roughly 2%. Even the governor didn't impose his latest mandate until today with a positivity rate of 5.2% statewide. Why, with this policy, John Shields is assuming that cases are being spread on the playground? What are the metrics and data for that? Please show me where it says COVID is more transmissible to kids playing outside. I saw in the email today that the high school had 7 reported positive cases. The high school kids have recess? Because that's where it's obviously spreading based on this policy. Maybe the reasons for cases are that the cloths and surgical masks do not block the coronavirus as well as some think. Or maybe it's the fact that kids are coming home with 3 to 4 soaking wet masks from sweat and who knows what else. And per the CDC, wet masks are less effective and should be removed when performing physical activities such as playing on the playground. I called the Kane County Health Department today and I was told that they did not recommend masks outdoors to the school. Yet many parents have emails saying it was indeed a recommendation. So who is telling the truth? It sounds like everyone is passing the buck, afraid to take ownership of their actions for fear of being held accountable. And it's really sad to watch. I want this policy reversed immediately. The more sunlight, exercise, and fresh air our kids get, the better. Let's not lose sight that this is a 99.9% survival for school-age kids before we start changing policies based on a 1 or 2% infection rate. Let's please stop with the weak leadership that continues to pass the buck, and please start using some critical thinking that is supported by actual facts. Thank you. I yield my time.
The next speaker is Jennifer Hogan.
I'm Jennifer Hogan. I've got a daughter at John Shields first grade. And I have to say it's sad to see how our school district is being run very militant and with a lack of socialization and any normalcy whatsoever for our children. You are ripping the privileges our children have right out of their hands, especially our elementary students. You are assigning them seats at lunch and telling them they can't get out of their desk during indoor recess, and now here we are making them wear masks when they play outside and mandating who they play with. It's just appalling. Let our children have their privileges back. Let them pick who they sit with at lunch. Write it down. You can give it to the lunch monitors. Let them pick who they get to play with for indoor recess. 2 to 3 kids in an area. Write it down, post it on the door so the lunch monitors can see it. That solves the issue with contact tracing. And then mask breaks. I agree, our kids are not getting any mask breaks. Instead, our kids are getting reprimanded if their mask is below their nose. They're getting nights tickets taken away from them. That's absolutely appalling. How many times are the teacher and staff able to take off their masks? I'm hoping a lot, because this brings up another concept, and if you want to go there, we'll talk about equity. Our kids should be getting just as many mask breaks during the school day that any other staff member is getting. Also, are the staff, administration, and board members being assigned seats for their lunch hour and told who they can socialize with? Then let's talk about discrimination. The email we received from the school district with how many unvaccinated people got shield testing. This is just sickening to me. This year is being handled way worse than last year. But oh, hey, let's all head out to Elburn Days or Lollapalooza with no issue and open up our borders to anyone. But as soon as our kids start school, oh my God, the COVID cases are through the roof. This world makes absolutely no sense to me right now, and neither is anybody on this board. There are many things we can do to make this easier on our children, and shame on our administration and board for being complacent, scared, and not thinking outside the box ahead of time. I am so sick of hearing, we didn't think about that prior, or but contact tracing, or I have to call the other schools and see what they're doing. Why didn't we already do that? This is not our first rodeo. Myself and many parents within this district have solutions we can offer you and are willing to help in any way, but that would mean you would actually have to pick up the phone and call us back, and actually respond back to mine and numerous other parents' emails with more than just a generic thank you in your email response. And like we've all heard this evening at every board meeting I've been to in the past 6 months, President Witt states how important it is to hear from our stakeholders and how you guys value our public comments. However, your actions tell a completely different story. Only one administrative member picked up the phone to actually call me and speak with me over these past 6 months, and he's actually not even considered to be part of the board, and the other one was the principal, John Shields, again, not a board member. Although I appreciate their time and conversation, we're still not getting the communication we are asking for, and many, many parents within this school district are very frustrated by your lack of communication, lack of planning, and lack of advocacy for our children's education, and quite frankly, we're sick of your excuses. See, these board meetings are really the only opportunity us stakeholders have to speak with you, and we are only given 3 minutes until we are rushed off the microphone and on to the next. And all the emails I personally sent asking for a meeting to speak further on this in the last 6 months, not one person responded back with a meeting time, but instead it's just a generic, we thank you for your email. I'm not done yet, 1 second. We want to speak with you, we want to have a back and forth dialect on this pandemic that has turned our children's lives upside down. After receiving that email this morning from John Shields, Principal McCoy, I took it upon myself to contact Kane County Health Department. Monica from the Kane County Health Department informed me they cannot enforce the school district to make children wear a face mask at recess or apply zoning for outdoors. So the Kane County Health Department did not enforce this, you guys did, and you need to take ownership. I ask myself again why you keep doing this, why you're not advocating for our children, why you're not at the ISB meeting, and why you're not pushing back. We cannot control COVID. No one can control COVID. The warning label on the mask box itself says this product is not a respirator and will not provide protection against COVID-19 or other viruses. Our kids are wearing masks at school and they're still getting COVID. Masks are not preventing the spread of COVID. So I'm begging you, start standing up with us and work with us and not against us. Let our kids have their privileges back and give them some of their freedom. This country's supposed to be the land of the free, and a lot of people forgot that.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask the board members, we have gone beyond the 30 minutes. There are 2 additional speakers. Rather than make them wait till the end, are board members okay if we allow them to speak now?
Yes.
Expand, okay. All right, so the next speaker then is Tonya Grossinger, and I'm gonna ask you guys to please stick within the 3 minutes.
I'm Tonya Grossinger from Maple Park. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but I don't know what else to do. We as parents have entrusted the education, the happiness, and the care of our children to you all. Year after year, we have followed blindly. No big issues, so no big deal. Now we have some big issues, so now it's a big deal. This pandemic has been very difficult on every single person. The one thing that should be constant right now are our kids in school. No child left behind, right? Wrong. We have all consumed our lives with this pandemic, and what we have lost sight of is that's truly important, raising and educating wonderful, well-rounded human beings. We talk about how deadly this virus is and how scary it is to be sick with it. Do you ever wonder about the repercussions from what we've done over the last 18 months? Has that ever been talked about? No. You want to know why? We don't want it to be scarier than COVID-19. Do you know that in 2020 in Illinois, 9 children under the age of 18 lost their lives due to COVID-19? Absolutely horrible. Do you know how many children in Illinois under the age of 17 committed suicide? 62. That's 7 times the amount of children that died from COVID-19, and that's not including ages 17 to 18. I'm not saying your decisions are easy, and I'm not even saying I want to be in your shoes right now, but we all have roles to play during this pandemic, and this is part of yours. I'd like to think that money was never the drive behind any of your decisions. However, after you caved at the universal masking before the mandate, I realized money was the issue. We've gone from 15 days to slow the spread to not even allowed to have a case at all. These metrics are unattainable, given by our governor. Do you know that they give you the scary numbers? Oh no, COVID cases have tripled in the hospitals. What they don't tell you is that's gone from 2 to 6 cases. Or how about the fact that we went on this mandate for the mask due to 50 out of 100,000 people getting COVID. That's less than 1% of people sick with COVID. But please, let's put on the masks. What about all the cavities and all the tooth decay these kids are getting from having the masks on all day? Don't believe me? Call a dentist and ask them yourself. I have. What about all these kids getting strep throat? Are you going to be worried about when people file those lawsuits? Because I would be. And if none of you realize that this is a push for our children to get the vaccine, I'm not really sure I want any of you in charge of my kids' education. The amazing CDC has even said that people vaccinated give, spread, and can get COVID just as easily as anybody else. But let's get vaccinated. You all want to talk about equity all the time? Let's discuss the staff being allowed more mask breaks than our kids. How's that equitable? And the communication from this district is severely lacking. Okay. My parents received better information from the schools via snail mail than we do via email. I don't care how minuscule the change is to our children's day, we deserve to know what it is and when it's going to happen, not an email the morning of. Please don't tell me or insult the rest of us by saying that this decision was made at 6 a.m. this morning. You all knew about this before the weekend. My ranting's over now, and this is what I want you to do. Board members, I want you to do the job we all elected you to do. I don't know if you forgot about that. We elected you. Maybe you need to start pushing the administration to help us fight more. Maybe you need to push them to ask more questions more. If they're not willing to do that, maybe it's time to get different administration. And if you're not willing to push them, maybe it's time we find new board members. If it's not about the money, prove it. What are you doing to fight for our kids to be maskless? Not one of you attended the ISB meeting 2 weeks ago. I watched it. Nobody was there. Tests and quarantine are also not the answer, and neither is asking the health department for permission weekly. How are you going to fight for our kids? I never imagined I'd be starting my children's school career this way. I was totally fine being a fly on the wall, but I'm done being played like a violin, as all are these parents. We want to work with you and not against you. Our children aren't pawns in a game. Stop treating them as such and start working with us for our kids.
Thank you.
The rest of my time.
Okay, when the time's up, you need to stop.
Okay, I just want to finish. I would like to know why my perfectly healthy daughter, who has no symptoms, wore a mask, wasn't face-to-face, nor exposed to the COVID-positive person for more than 15 minutes, has to stay home for 14 days. My daughter likes school. She actually wants to be there, yet the student who shared a seat with the COVID-positive person over 15 minutes was at school today. Tell me how this isn't discrimination. Tell me how you aren't teaching my daughter how to discriminate and bully others. Is this what you want our future leaders to do? When you're old and these kids are the ones making laws and rules and teaching your grandchildren, do you want to continue the discrimination that Kaneland School District taught them? I don't. I fear for our future because of what you are doing, way more than I fear a virus with a 99% survival rate. Our kids are suffering, and it is absolutely your fault. Take responsibility. Stand up for our kids. It's time for our community to accept that viruses don't go away, and we need to adapt and move forward. Last week, HB 4135 was introduced. The bill states, quote, amends the school code, provides the State Board of Education may issue, refuse, to issue or revoke recognition for schools. End quote. At this point in time, ISB cannot revoke recognition if you choose to stand up for our kids. It is not lawful, and they have no grounds to stand on. This means you, the Kaneland School Board, who represents me, my family, our whole community, have the ability to say no. You have the ability to make masks optional. You have the ability to allow perfectly healthy children to attend school.
Time's up.
You have the ability to stop focusing on politics and agendas and start doing what your actual job is and focus on education.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments. We're going to move on now to the consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda contains the following action items: the approval of the treasurer's report from August of 2021, the approval of minutes of the August 9th, 2021 regular meeting, an amended approval of resignations, terminations, and employment of staff, and the following informational items: the budget update, a Freedom of Information Act FOIA requests report, and the field trip request. So I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
Bob, will you make yours a second? Ms. Junk made the motion at the same time you did. Are you willing to second the motion?
I think you said second.
Okay. And a roll call, please.
Mr. Carey,
Ryan?
Dr. Lawler,
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky,
Bob? Bob, are you there? Okay, he said aye.
Mrs. Simmons,
Aye.
Mrs. Witt,
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Okay, we'll move on now to new business. The first item on new business is the approval of the community engagement consultant.
Yes, thank you. This is a kind of an update and new information at the same time. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Fuchs, and she can walk us through the update.
Thank you, Dr. Layden. At the June 28th board meeting, after the administration finished the presentation of the update of the master facility plan, we had asked the Board of Education if we would be allowed to seek a community engagement consultant. The purpose of the community engagement consultant is to find out through surveys, through conversations, through forums from our community, what they believe of the success of our master facility plan for Kaneland High School. Can they not hear me?
There's just a lot of static.
Okay.
They need to mute themselves.
Yeah. I think the callers need to mute themselves, at least for this point, when they're not speaking. Thanks.
That might help. So anyway, so with the master facility plan at Kaneland High School, we want to seek feedback from all of our stakeholders, and through the community engagement consultant, they will help us to do that. I sent out the request for proposal, and we received 2 proposals. We put a committee together with 2 board members, Dr. Layden and myself, and then the architect, Mr. Maurer. We interviewed both companies through the process in one evening and determined that one company would better meet the needs of the district than the other, and that is the company that we're recommending tonight. The name of it is E.O. Sullivan Consulting, and it's led by Ed Sullivan. The total cost of his proposal is $37,500. Those costs include the startup costs, the community survey, community visioning workshops, and then a final written analysis of findings and plan recommendations. Please note that our committee is very cognizant of what's going on with COVID, and so finding the appropriate time to do the community engagement and getting the feedback on the master facility plan is important to all of us. E.O. Sullivan has stated that they can help us to determine which time, or not which time, but what time is better to do these things. And so we want to engage with them to start some initial conversations. Before you know it, we're going to need to be making decisions on the summer 22 capital projects. And so everything flows together. And basically, we're asking tonight for the Board of Education to approve or direct the district to execute a contract with E.O. Sullivan for this purpose. Are there any questions, comments? I know that Mrs. Witt and Mrs. Simmons helped with the interviews.
I have a question. So what criteria made you choose this company over the other? What were some of the determining factors?
Are you?
I was actually asking the other board,
Okay.
Mrs. Witt and Mrs. Simmons.
So I know one of the questions that we had when we kind of brought this up as a board was we need to be able to target the different communities in our community, you know, like people that have kids, people that don't have kids, to the grandparents. And this company has a great plan when it comes to that. They're very educated, knowing how to reach those people. And I know that's one of our biggest concerns. So that was something that really stood out for me.
They also, there was a noticeable difference between the two groups, the two companies. It was unanimous and pretty obvious to all of us who, you know, based on their experience and the presentation in general and kind of demeanor and things like that. So that was part of it. And then okay, so I am not necessarily sure that I am okay with going to referendum or anything like that. What I liked about this company was that not only can they get to those groups and say, you know, do you want a referendum? They can actually back up a step and say, is your community tolerant at all right now of this?
Okay, yeah.
And that to me was important, because if the community doesn't want to hear it right now, then I don't think we should do it. So, so that, and they had 600 experience with 600 type, you know, similar campaigns that they had worked with. So that was important to me, and it was nice to talk about, you know, something different and something positive. It was the room was pretty electric with positivity, and it was nice. Okay. So that's just an aside. But.
And the other thing I wanted to add was another thing, you know, we had the full plan, and we were even questioning, is there certain parts that we can take and not, you know, that maybe we should hold off on? And so they're going to help with that too. They're going to help us to decipher more of that, like what, again, like Mrs. Witt just said, that, you know, what's going to be tolerable at this point? Obviously, we all know there's certain things that have to get done. We have to keep maintaining the schools. We have to keep maintaining certain things. So we can't just stop because of COVID. And so they're going to really come alongside of us and help us with that. They just definitely felt more strong when it came to knowing how to reach those answers for us. So.
And they also expressed a willingness to stop and start up again when we're ready. So like if something happens, you know, if things get worse or there's a different situation that happens, they were willing to stop, put a hold on it, and then pick up with the contract later. So, do you want to add anything? You or Julianne?
That's good.
Mr. Gonzalez, I would just say that the big key that I thought that Mrs. Witt just talked about was the 2 points. The number one, them being able to start and stop and be able to, number one, continue as needed, but then also call a plan as needed. And then the other piece too was rather than moving forward, they will be able, through investigation, surveys, and engagement, be able to figure out whether now is even the time or not, and be able to give us that feedback. Those are my two takeaways.
And if the answer is not, are we paying $37,000 for them to tell us this isn't the time?
No.
No.
Okay.
I mean, we'd probably have to pay them for whatever portion that they did do, but.
Then at that point, they also said they'd be willing to, if they contract with us, put it on hold, and then based on their recommendations, and then when and if we start up again, they would be able to work with us, rather than starting over with a different firm or a different company.
Were the bids fairly competitive from a dollar perspective?
There was about $12,000 difference between them.
Okay.
So, any other questions? Did Ryan or Bob, do you have questions regarding the consultant?
No, I do not.
Bob, do you have questions?
Not offhand.
Okay.
Not offhand.
Okay, thank you. So, any other questions from up here? If there are no other questions, then I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education directs the administration to execute a contract with E.O. Sullivan as a community engagement consultant to seek feedback regarding the KHS master facility plan from Kaneland stakeholders with a maximum cost of $37,500.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. So we will move on now to J2, which is the report on the opening of school.
Yes, annually is one of our first board meetings of the school year. We share some of the highlights as we open school. There are a number of them, and I'm happy to be able to share those. Our first one is, even though our new board members, Mr. Mankivsky, Mrs. Simmons, and Mr. Gonzalez, were elected in April and took seat in April, I just wanted to, again, recognize them as we start a new school year with our new board. So we do have 3 new board members as we start the school year. Also, the other piece at the last board meeting, I'm sure you remember seeing the Kaneland Connects presentation. We are glad to have Kaneland Connects as our strategic plan moving forward. We were also able last Thursday night with our Citizens Advisory Committee to share a truncated version of that with the committee. As Dr. Atkins shared at the beginning of the school year with our new staff, we will eventually try to welcome and bring them in to meet our board and meet our community. We have hired over 70 new staff to start the school year. And a plug for Dr. Fuchs, we are still looking for bus drivers. So if you know of bus drivers or know anybody's interested in driving a bus, please send them to Dr. Fuchs or Dr. Atkins. As we talked about in the summer, we've hired 4 behavior facilitators for the upcoming school year to meet some of our students' SEL needs. And as of last week, we've had 35 requests already from those facilitators meet with students and teachers to work with students' needs. If you come to the high school, you will see outside on Dauberman and Kesslinger, we continue to have a great relationship with the King County Sheriff, and they have officers out there before and after school to help facilitate a smooth transition of our buses and our students. That can sometimes be a complicated intersection and a busy road. Also, I'm happy to introduce at some point at a future meeting in October, the Kaneland Foundation has hired a new executive director, or hired an executive director for the first time. Her name is Becky Greenlee. She will be here in October to share last year's teacher grants, and then also share the plan about the golf outing, and then also next year's grants also. The homecoming parade, if you recall, 5-6 years ago, we started a rotation through a number of our communities. This year's homecoming parade is back in Maple Park. So Maple Park will have the homecoming parade. Our solar power field at 4 of our buildings is fully operational now. We look forward to getting some data and be able to share that data. And I do know that one of the classes out at Northern, one of the professors has contacted us to be able to come out and take a look at it, learn from it, and then be able to use the field itself and the mathematics behind it on what we're saving and what we're generating here power-wise. Continuing our tradition of 4 schools in 1 book. I can't tell you the book title right now because there's an official unveiling that will come later. Our 4 elementary schools across the district read the same book at the same time with a number of lessons and shared lessons across the district. Mrs. Eggleston, if you recall, she just came up a little while ago for salutes. Just want to thank her again and our Elburn Lions and Skinner Amusements for their work in setting up that day. And then lastly, if you recall, 2 years ago we started 211, a relationship with Kane County, which is an emergency phone number for families that might be having emergencies, whether it's a social emotional emergency, a financial emergency, a health crisis, a family crisis. 211 in Kane County is still an active working number for our families that may need additional supports. And with that, those are the exciting things that we have to start our school year.
Thank you.
And no action is needed.
Okay. And Dr. Fuchs didn't have anything to add? Do you have anything to add? No. Questions, comments from board members? We good?
We had the new executive assistant, or what's her role with the foundation?
Executive Director?
Executive director, yeah. She was into my place of business, and she was pounding the pavement, trying to get people out to the golf outing, and so, you know, it was nice to see that. So just a kudos to her, to see her proactively getting out there and raising money for the foundation.
There's
Thank
also
you.
been a noticeable difference in the social media marketing. Kind of the branding is a little more
Yes.
obvious.
Yes. That was our goal in moving in that direction, so thank you for the feedback from both of you. Thank you.
All right. So now we will move on to J3. And J3 doesn't have any discussion because it stems from closed session at the last meeting. So at this time, I move that the Kaneland Board of Education approves Dr. Layden's July 19th, 2021 decision in Uniform Grievance Procedure Case Number 2021-01. Is there a second?
I second.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. J4 is a similar, is also a uniform grievance procedure based on closed session discussion at the last meeting. At this time, I move that the Kaneland Board of Education approves Dr. Layden's July 19th, 2021 decision in Uniform Grievance Procedure Case Number 2021-02. Is there a second?
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Bob?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Okay, so that is the end of new business. And we'll move on to the superintendent and board reports.
Yes, last Thursday, a couple items, and then I'll ask Dr. Fuchs and Dr. Atkins to share a little more information, expand on a couple of them. But the first one, last Thursday, CAC met for our first meeting of the year. We received some good back-to-school feedback. It's one of our August or September topics for our first meeting of the year. We're regularly looking for feedback on how things went as families and students transition back to the school year. As I mentioned earlier, Mr. Raleigh and Dr. Mumm attended the meeting and gave an update on Kaneland Connects and the strategic plan and how that is going. And then also, Dr. Fuchs and Dr. Atkins were there to also share some information on quarantine, shield testing, and live streaming, which we'll get to in a second. They'll basically share a lot of that same information. A couple other reminders. No school on Monday, September 6th, in observance of Labor Day. And Dr. Fuchs, before we get to the last ones I introduced, can you give a brief update on the foundation meeting from 2 weeks ago?
Last week.
Sorry?
Last week.
Last week, sorry,
Yep,
last week.
Yep. So at the foundation meeting, Becky was there, and she did a great job interacting with the foundation board. She covered a lot of topics, primarily the golf outing and all of the work that she's doing. She shared with the board. She got their feedback on other opportunities for community members that might be possible sponsors or golfers. We are, as Dr. Layden mentioned, still looking for golfers for September 23rd. It's really important this year that we fill the golf course with 72 golfers. I think we're a little over 30 right now. So if you know anybody who wants to golf on that day, please send them our way and let's get them signed up. She also began the discussions on spring fundraising. She talked a lot about the mailing that we did. For the golf outing, she sent out over 4,000 invites to alumni. She's starting to pull all the alumni data together, and the foundation board approved her to purchase some software to help keep track of alumni and where they're at and things like that. So it's going very well. She's busy all the time. She's met with a lot of our community members. As you mentioned, Mr. Gonzalez, she's been out and about. And it's just really fun watching her. I do believe that the foundation will grow and become recognized throughout the community as a result of her work.
Thank you. Is that it?
That's it.
That was a lot, but thank you, yes.
Sorry.
That's it, but I mean,
It was,
are you done?
it was a
Yes, so thank
very
you.
long, good meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
The next piece we want to touch base on, as we move forward, there've been a lot of board member questions and wanted to provide an update on a couple topics. First of all, just quarantining in general. I know there's a number of questions of who quarantines and how is that process defined. So I'll have Dr. Fuchs share a little bit about the quarantine process, and then as part of quarantine, after that I'll have Dr. Adkins come up to the microphone. He can share a little more about the live streaming piece when a student is quarantined, how the live streaming piece takes place, how students can then participate, and how they sign up for that. Then the last piece, Dr. Fuchs then close with giving a little bit of information on shield testing, what shield testing is. You're probably familiar with it, but the process and how it's worked moving forward. And then one other key item that we'll talk about at the conclusion of that is the test to stay and the components for the test to stay program that will that could very well minimize students' time during quarantine. So it's important to provide that update. So with that one, Dr. Fuchs, I'll let you share the quarantine piece first.
Very good, thank you. So COVID has been keeping the administration and the nurses extremely busy, not only during the day, but many evenings and weekends. Whenever there is a positive case that gets reported, the very first thing we do is try to identify either the date of the test or the date when the symptoms first began. Once we do that, then we take it 48 hours prior to that, and that's when the contact tracing begins from that point forward. To be identified as a close contact, if you're in a classroom and you're between 3 to 6 feet and you're masked, you're not considered a close contact. However, if you're less than 3 feet and or unmasked, you may be considered a close contact. On the school bus, the rule is 6 feet, even with a mask. Outside, it's also 6 feet. Mostly outside, in fact, they don't have masks, but we still have to go through the process of the 6 feet separation. And that is for the length of time is 15 cumulative minutes over the time period from the onset of the symptoms. If a student or a staff member has been vaccinated, they are not required to quarantine. And I think that might be some of the questions that you might be hearing from some of our families this evening with regard to why some children are and some children aren't quarantined, and it does have to do with the vaccination status. These guidelines are given to us from the Illinois Department of Public Health through the Kane County Health Department. If a student is either too young or has selected not to be vaccinated for whatever reason, their quarantine period might be 7, 10, or 14 days. It just depends, and the health department truly has the final say on that. For example, at Shields right now, where you've seen extra mitigations put into place because of the number of cases, they've also recommended that the people that are being quarantined for Shields complete the full 14 days. By doing that, they're hoping to slow and or stop the spread. It is possible after 10 days and no symptoms that a student would be able to come back with a letter from the health department. Additionally, some students have been allowed back in after 7 days and a negative PCR or NAAT test. So those are some choices. Once we have identified the close contacts, either an administrator or a nurse will call the parents and walk them through that process. We also complete a report for the health department. In that report, it has the positive student's name and then all of the close contacts that we've identified. Within 2 to 3 days, the health department will then begin contacting those families, and they ask them a bunch of questions, screening kinds of questions about their symptoms and what they're experiencing, if anything at all. In our district, Dr. Atkins and I do daily counts. He counts the staff members that are out. I count all the students that are out. And we then send a message to the community reporting any positive cases for that day. Weekly, I update the website with statistics for the week. And last week or this week, I've recently added the shield testing information to that website so that you could see what was happening the prior week with regard to shield testing. Once a student has been identified as needing to be quarantined or isolated because they've either been identified or they're a close contact, then they have the opportunity to live stream, and that's where I'm going to ask Dr. Atkins to explain that process.
Thank you, Dr. Fuchs. So when a student is quarantined, based on the guidance we received from the state board, Carmen Ayala, the state superintendent, requested that students provide some sort of instruction for students who are quarantined. However, the state did not define that. As we looked around at our surrounding areas, what I think you would see is more of a typical legacy construct, maybe a packet, maybe a, read this and comment or journal, or some of the things that you might have seen if your child was out for a vacation or extended period of time prior to COVID. Within Kaneland, as you know, we started doing the passive live stream last year. We wanted to maintain that to kind of go above and beyond what that expectation might be. So the passive live stream is designed for students to be able to see what's going on, see the direct instruction within the classroom, see that the teacher is maybe demonstrating something with manipulatives or something on a board and talking about whatever the aspects of the lesson are, so that the students may see that and experience that direct instruction. If you think about it, think of it like a podcast you might watch or a TED Talk you might see on YouTube. Although you don't get to necessarily interact with a TED Talk, by virtue of seeing it, watching it, listening to it, you do garner something. It may not be the best model, but it is a decent model, more so than what we were thinking might have to happen when a student's quarantined. So the first thing that's going to happen is, once we've identified those students and gone through that process that Dr. Fuchs described, the building secretarial staff is going to email the family that's been affected with a link. That link is for a Google survey. One of the pieces of feedback we got from the community at the end of last year was that we set up a live stream, and for the entirety of the school day, there were parts of the day that were more fruitful for the child to pay attention to, and other parts that the parents or the family weren't as interested in their child participating in. So what we've done is we've provided the family the opportunity to say, I want to make sure my child's in language arts, math. You know what? We'll take a pass on this class or that class for right now because maybe they can get that, or they're doing well enough, or whatever the case may be. Some parents...
Can you just give me 1 second? Bob, could you mute your microphone, please? Thank you.
But this gives, yes, thank you. This gives more control to the family to be able to decide what they want their child to passively live stream throughout the day. So that way, if there is something that they're less interested in their child participating in, they're not sitting there in front of a screen waiting for the next thing to come up. That email, that Google survey data then comes back. The administration meets with all the teachers whose students' parents have requested the live streaming. They have 24 hours to set it up. So hopefully from the time a child's been identified and isolated, 24 hours later, they're able to passively live stream in. We do ask, as we do all the time, if there's any changes to parental information or contact information, please make sure that's updated in Tyler. That's just in general, but specifically if your child's facing isolation or quarantine, please make sure that you update that parental email in there so that we can make sure we get you that link in a timely fashion. Let's see, what else? There may be days, and we've already encountered this, where even though I may select to be part of a live stream, for a certain class. There may be days where the instruction going on in that classroom or the activity in that classroom isn't conducive to live streaming. For example, we've spent the day before talking about a certain concept in science. We've set up a lab, and then the day of the lab, I might not be there to physically do the lab, and the teacher might let the student know, hey, when you come back, we'll do this lab at a later time. And they may not need to passively live stream for that particular lesson, but that would be communicated with families from the teacher. Students can, always have and always will, be able to make up work upon their return. And then there is information in the student handbook about how many days, for how many days you've been out, you have to make up tests, quizzes, projects, assignments, all those kinds of things. That is always going to be in place. And then with our youngest students, parents may need to assist with that initial logging in of the link so that the kids can get that onto their device. And if any family has any challenges with the technology, with access, or whatever, I just ask please to contact your building administration. We can work with you with devices, hotspots, and those kinds of things to make sure you have connectivity and access at home. All of our students, we can make those provisions for should they need it. So hopefully students, between any of the other assignments and things that the teachers provide for them, the makeup period when they return, and that passive live streaming, will be able to maintain their learning while they're out. Does it replace them being physically present? Of course not, but at the same time, it is a good option for our students. So if you have any questions about that, as a family who has children that are quarantined, please contact your building administration right away.
Thank you, Dr. Eck.
Thank you.
Shield testing?
Yes, please.
So shield testing, as I mentioned, I think at the last board meeting, was developed by the University of Illinois. It is a saliva-based test. It is not costing Kaneland School District or taxpayers any money to fund the shield testing. It is completely funded through the grant that has been received by the U of I. And so they have stated that their results are 99% accurate. Last week was our first week of shield testing. We tested 2 schools a day, 2 on Tuesday, 2 on Wednesday, and 2 on Thursday. Tuesday and Thursday went really well. Wednesday was a bit challenging for a variety of reasons, one of them being the early release at John Shields. And so we did only get 8 students tested at John Shields. So I'm hopeful that this Wednesday in 2 days will be a little bit better in terms of more smooth, a better process, and just hopefully no emergencies and things like that. We tested 338 students last week. We did have all negative results, so that was a great first week. One of the tests was not enough to conduct the results or get the results, so we'll work with that student. We did have over 600 sign up, so I do believe that this week we'll probably see more students test than last week. The primary benefit of the Shields test is to know that your student is negative at least once a week. Additionally, when we first started this process, we had, there was guidance out there that said that it would help to keep kids in school. After we started the program and sent out the communications, that guidance shifted slightly as the Test to Stay program with their rules and guidance became the rules that we would have to follow. So again, the primary benefit right now is that the Shields testing, you will know that your student, son or daughter, is negative at least once a week. That leads me into the Test to Stay program. So now that the Shields testing is up and running, we're working with Shield Illinois to try to implement the Test to Stay program, primarily because that's what's going to keep our kids in school more often, which is what we all want. With the Test to Stay program, a student must be enrolled in the Shield Illinois weekly screenings. Shield Illinois is primarily for unvaccinated students. I have received diverse opinions on that. One entity will tell you it's okay to test vaccinated because the test works on vaccinated students. The other entity will tell you, but we don't want you testing vaccinated people because it's meant for unvaccinated, and that's not their purpose. So currently, we are testing unvaccinated kids and unvaccinated staff. And again, the guidance has shifted regularly throughout the last 8 to 10 weeks on a variety of topics. This is simply one more topic where it's evolving on a regular basis.
And that is
that's
an opt-in.
Say it again?
That's a totally opt-in.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We had a choice when we first signed up for Shield, Illinois, to make it opt-out or opt-in. Dr. Layden and I decided that an opt-in process is what we would want for our Kaneland families. And so that's what we've done. With that, if a student is regularly participating in Shield, Illinois testing on a weekly basis, and they are identified as a close contact, if their weekly testing is negative on the day of their exposure, we can conduct additional tests on days 1, 3, 5, and 7 using what we think is going to be Binax Now. That has not been confirmed yet. That's what we're working on. The reason why we would want to use a different test is because it has a 15-minute rapid result. The Shield testing, we get results overnight. They're in my email first. Well, I have to go to it, but log in that. But they're there in the morning. And so if a student is participating in Shield, testing negative, has an exposure, and gets those additional daily tests on days 1, 3, 5, and 7, they can actually test to stay in school. There are some other criteria that have to be met, and we will be sharing all of that information with our families and community once we have the system in place and we're confident that we've got enough product and personnel in which to conduct the test to stay. Those are the two main things that we have to make sure are in place. We don't want to advertise something that we're not prepared to do. Which leads me to the point of we need additional people. We believe that we could do it with 4 people, 2 for the test to stay, and then we desperately need help with contact tracing for our schools. So we are thinking we would need 2 contact tracers. We would have those contact tracers help our administration and nurses do the contact tracing, and then the other 2 personnel would do the test to stay, and they would do each 3 schools so that one of them would do Blackberry, Stewart, and the high school. The other one would do McDowell, Shields, and Harder, and test on days 1, 3, 5, and 7 for any of those students who have been identified as a close contact in an effort to allow more students the opportunity to stay in school and not have to be quarantined.
Would we have people conducting tests on the weekends? Because obviously 1 through 5 and 7, somewhere in there you're on a weekend.
Yep. I don't believe that they do the tests on the weekends. They do them on Fridays and Mondays. So whatever day is closest to the days 1, 3, 5, and 7.
Yeah, they have other guidance on the 1, 3, 5, and 7. If it's a holiday or a weekend, they have that guidance in there that we would follow.
Yeah. Good question. So, Teresa, we don't have that extra personnel positions on the agenda, but we really believe it's time sensitive. So what we'd like to do is make sure if the board has any concerns that we address the concerns tonight so that we can put the positions on the next board agenda, and possibly in the personnel report, I guess it'd have to be after that, fill those positions in the same meeting. So that way we can post anticipated positions starting tomorrow in preparation for when we're ready to be up and running.
Okay. Have we done that before?
Yes, we've done
Mm-hmm.
anticipated, posting, anticipated, and then followed up with the board.
Okay.
We have done that in the past. And as an example, Dr. Fuchs, thanks for all that information. As an example, today, based on the daily metrics that Dr. Fuchs and Dr. Atkins put together, we had 237 students that were quarantined that are out today. And so with the test to stay, based on the number of families that would sign up through SHIELD testing, they would test immediately. If the day they're confirmed as a close contact, they would be able to stay in school. So at this point right now, the test to stay is by far the best option for our district to keep our students in school, and that's why we wanted to bring it tonight rather than wait for a whole nother meeting to present it and then wait a month for approval.
Dr. Layden, will you share with the board what you learned about some of our nearby school districts today with regard to both SHIELD testing and test to stay?
Yeah, it's a challenge right now. At first, when SHIELD testing came out, it was only allowable at no charge for Tier 1 and Tier 2, Tier 3 and Tier 4 schools, and we qualified, so we right away did it to take advantage of it, and some of our neighboring districts unfortunately didn't at the time because it would have been expensive, but then they went to making SHIELD testing free across the state for all districts, and unfortunately some of the other districts are still working to get there. And with the number of people backlogged through SHIELD testing, it may take as long as 4 to 8 weeks to get some of the other districts up and running. So while it's not perfect, it's the best option for us to keep kids in school. So that's why we wanted to bring it to the board for approval, or not approval, but consensus approval to move forward to bring it on the next agenda.
Okay, so would you like to entertain questions on that now?
Sure.
Do any board members have questions about the 4 positions that they're being proposed? We'll discuss them tonight, and then we'll put it on the agenda for the next.
Would that go on the agenda or the consent agenda?
Wherever you would like it. If we put it on
usually decide that
consent-
on Tuesday?
Yeah, if we,
Yes.
yeah, if we put it on
It'll be
consent,
decided at a later date.
Yeah.
if we put it on consent right above the personnel report, that would flow. But if the board wants to talk about it at the next meeting, then the appropriate place would be new business.
New business.
So, are there
I
questions
don't have
now?
any questions.
Okay. Do either of our phone call board members have questions regarding the 4 positions proposed? Ryan, Bob, do you?
Did I miss how much we thought this was all gonna cost?
That hasn't been discussed. It would be on the agenda at the next meeting.
Because based on the position, there could be different rates.
The question was, would whatever it costs be offset by federal dollars?
Could be the ESSER money.
The ESSER money would be able to be used, is what Dr. Fuchs is saying.
Can't think of anything else off the top of my head.
Okay. Anyone else here? Do you feel you have your direction?
We do. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Fuchs. Thank you, Dr. Atkins.
Dr. Layden, I do have one other board update.
Yes.
I wanted to let the board know the Health Insurance Committee also met last week. We are in the process of rolling out the new voluntary benefit that the board approved last spring. It's the life insurance with long-term care for all of our employees that are eligible for benefits. Please remember, as you see this roll out, there is no cost to the district. The entire cost of the voluntary benefit will be on the employee. But the employees are very grateful for this opportunity, and I wanted to share that.
Thank you. So are we? I'm all over the place here on the board report. We kind of jumped around, or?
Yeah, we're done with the board reports. Yes. we're
Thank
done
you,
with-
sorry.
Or superintendent reports.
Okay.
Yep.
Board members have anything? No? Okay. Topics for future agendas. Board members? Do either of the callers have a topic for future agendas? Mr. Carey or Mr.
No, not offhand.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a sign-in sheet? Do you have a sign-in sheet for the second public comment?
Dr. Atkins, do you have a sign-in sheet for?
Okay, so this is the second opportunity for public comment. The same rules apply. The first speaker is Jessica Kalal. And we do ask that you adhere to the 3 minutes, please.
Hi, my name is Jessica Kalal, and I'm a parent of a first grader and a fourth grader at Kaneland John Shields. I actually had to leave my daughter's softball game early tonight because I'm so disturbed and bothered by the state of affairs in my children's school. First, thank you to the board members who voted for masks optional earlier this month and that actually listened to the parents of your district. I love how you're checking your phone right now also. Yeah, okay. So first, the topic of quarantine is an absolute joke and clusterfuck at Kaneland John Shields. My son has been determined to be an alleged close contact, and he sits in quarantine as we speak. He has not been able.
That you not swear. Okay.
He's not been able to. He's not been able to. That's how upset I am. Honestly, if you were a parent of a student in the district, you would be upset too.
Okay, hold on. The speaker can stop.
So.
Okay. Okay, two things. You need to put your mask on, and you need to not scream out, okay? No, we were listening to the speaker before you interrupted her.
So can she have a time back, but she had to stop so you guys get off your cell phones?
The clock stopped when she stopped speaking.
No, it was ticking. It was ticking. It didn't stop. It didn't.
Okay.
I barely said anything, and it's at 1:53.
That would be fine.
Thank you.
Why don't you start over?
Okay, so on the topic of quarantine, my son, who's a first grader at John Shields, is currently in quarantine as we speak, so I can tell you firsthand how the process is actually working at John Shields, not what the superintendent or assistant superintendent are telling you. My son was determined to be an alleged close contact. The school could not tell me how or why or when that happened. I got no information. The Illinois Department of Public Health and ISB guidelines right now say that if you're within 3 to 6 feet of another student with your masks on for more than 15 minutes, yes, you're a close contact, but you don't have to quarantine. I sent that guidance to the school. They could not tell me why my son is a close contact and why he's being quarantined as we speak. My son also has an IEP, and I asked the school, what services will my son get from his IEP while he's in quarantine? I was told none, and he's getting none. He's getting nothing, nothing. And the principal at John Shields told me, quote, none, because he's absent. My son isn't absent. He's been forced out of school. He's not sick. He's home healthy, and he's being quarantined by the school. The live streaming is an absolute joke. I challenge one of you to sit in on a live stream. You can't see or hear anything the teacher is talking about. You don't get called on. You can't see the board. It's a first grade teacher pointing at words my son can't even see. I can't see them. The live streaming is a complete joke. And that's the truth of it. Outdoor masks at John Shields and zones? Is this the Department of Corrections that I'm sending my child to, or is this a school? Literally, my children are 9 and 6 and now have to wear a mask outside. Do you guys wear masks outside? It's absolutely ridiculous, and it's against the CDC isn't saying that. The governor's not saying that. The state's not saying that. The school's having sports being held outside, football and everything else. No masks outside, but the John Shield kids have to wear masks on the playground? Give me a break. Absolutely ridiculous. And the principal snuck that in a link today in the News You Can Use newsletter that half the parents don't read. That warranted a separate email as an update to the masking policy. Not snuck in as a link. It's an absolute disgrace. My son has been now quarantined for 6 days, hasn't gotten a single thing. He was sent home with some glue sticks, pencils, and a couple of papers, and that was a nice effort, I suppose, on the teacher's part. He hasn't gotten any of his services, no special ed services. And Dr. Lead and I've emailed multiple times, never have gotten a response. The Kaneland golf outing that you're so excited about, was everyone going to be masked at the golf outing that's outside? Or do the rules not apply to you and to the district administration? Just mask the kids, right? Because they won't talk back. Absolutely ridiculous state of affairs at the schools right now. It's embarrassing and shameful.
The next speaker is Tonya Grossinger.
Tonya Grossinger with from Maple Park. A couple things I just wanted to note here. How come none of our flags at any of our schools are at half-mast for the 13 service members we lost in Afghanistan? Disgraceful, shameful. You've had since Thursday evening to do this. Since Thursday. It's now Monday night. Good job, guys.
Why is that? Do we get any response ever? Or does the public just get to comment? No response. Why aren't the flags at half-mast? Okay, listen. We read the rules for public comment. We said we do not respond. That is common to all boards in the area. It's not just us. And we really need you to quit screaming out. So, Tonya, I'll give you a little, looks like they stopped the clock, so you can continue, please.
Thank you. How is it okay to supply a test that's only for unvaccinated kids and staff members? We all want to talk about discrimination all the time. How is that not discrimination? We've said 100 times, and I'll say it 101. Vaccinated people can get and spread and all the fun junk that comes with COVID just as easily as the next person. This is getting out of hand. And I just want to ask, are any of you proud of the current situation? We have parents literally fighting each other, not literally like fist, but fighting each other. We have Facebook pages that we all can't even be on because this is what's going on. And the people that are supposed to be the middle ground for us have the most lame answers for everything. We have school board members on a Facebook page for one side. I'm sorry, I don't care what side you believe, what you think for your children, but because of where you stand on the board, you should exit that page and stay off of it. You have too much going on. You speak for all of us. You want to only speak for your kid? Get off. We'll happily replace you. Happily. And Dr. Lawler, you keep doodling and going on your phone. We literally mean nothing to you. Please don't come to any of us if you ever want to be reelected. This is absolutely ridiculous and shameful. I think everybody needs to put the flags down at all the schools tomorrow in honor of our service members that passed away. I know it ended tonight. Forget it. None of them are down. They should be down now.
Okay. The board does have a closed session tonight. You can make a public comment if you'll stay within the 3 minutes, please.
Dr. Atkins, that's okay. We can just write them down.
I'll write them down.
Yeah, as they share their names. Thank you.
Tim Cicero, Cicero. I have one student. This is my first year. She's at John Shields. I did not come to talk about COVID. I came to watch you. And Aaron, this is the most disrespectful I've seen anyone at a board meeting. This is my first time at a Kaneland event or a board meeting. I've been to other board meetings in the village, and I've never seen as much disrespect towards our families of Kaneland. I strongly suggest in closed session, you bring up the people that do not respect and look at people and they're texting on, or I don't know what he's doing on his phone, but he's not paying attention to people. And it's very, very disrespectful in my eyes. And it makes me think, is this what's happening inside of our classrooms also? Is this a good example for our teachers and our students of someone doodling and on their cell phones? I don't think our kids are allowed on their cell phones in the classroom. I don't think that he should be on his cell phone during a public comment. I strongly, strongly suggest that you guys discuss this in closed session. And we're talking about live stream, and it's hard to hear the two members that are on the phone right now. If we could look into future, how we could get maybe them live stream up here so that we could see them at home, so that they're giving us the respect and we'll give them the same respect back. Thank you.
Hi, Scott Stahlke. I was in the first session as well. I have 4 or 5 items, and first, I'd like you to know that I pray for you guys. I pray for our state government, our village governments, our federal governments, because you guys need wisdom, you need discernment, and that's as much as I can do without coming up here and giving you my opinion. So I want you to know that. The other thing, you guys are spending money on a consultant. If you don't get your affairs in order, you're not going to need any expansion. Your people are leaving your district, and it's going to continue. So you better get the affairs in order, or you're not going to even need it. The other question I have is, has anybody asked the state ISB in writing to respond on why vaccinated versus unvaccinated are different protocols? I'd really be curious. You are going to get a FOIA from me on this, and they're going to get a FOIA from me, so you better get your ducks in a row. The other question I have is, I've watched several of these online, and I have never heard not one response to any public question or comment. At some point, do we get a comment or a response? I understand not doing it at the time and at the meeting and going back and doing some research. I completely understand that. I've been the president of the fire district. I understand it. But you do have a duty to respond to the constituents that voted you into these offices and appointed you. You have that duty. Thank you.
So I will say that we do have the administration respond to people's specific questions that are posed in public comment.
Where are they posted? Please advise where they're posted and send that out.
No, they don't post it.
You can email about the fertilizer going on the grass. You can surely email about the questions asked at board meeting.
Okay, that's what I'm saying is an administrator personally contacts people who have specific questions that need answers.
Can you tell us which one and who they answered? Because none of us have gotten anything. None of us have gotten anything.
It varies.
On one of our Facebook sites, there's hundreds of us. None of us. We've all asked.
So you're saying an administrator like at the school sends it to us, or you guys send it to us?
The board doesn't respond. The administration does usually.
Administration at school responds to the questions we're asking you. Is that what you're saying?
I just asked you 4 questions. I'd like to know who's responding to me. I'd like to know that. Because then I will post them if you guys will not. I just want to know who's responding so I know who to expect it from.
Okay, somebody will respond to you after the meeting at another time.
So you can't answer that question. Thank
So you don't know.
Okay, so the next speaker is?
Matt Brown, Sugar Grove.
Okay.
All right, first off, I understand your guys' job. All right, right now it's a difficult situation, but this is where you guys got to have a backbone and stand up for the people who need you to talk to and stand up. And second of all, I have a kid at John Shields, Harder, and high school, all of them. Today, when my kid came home after recess and said, I don't want to go to Kaneland anymore, I want to go to ACS because they have them wear a mask and doing the zones, piggybacking off of everyone else just said, you're telling me that it's okay to send kids outside? This is a time for them to get their energy out. This is a time for them to go and have fun, but yet we're going to have them wear a mask in 85, 95 degree weather and breathing out there? Come on. You guys don't wear them. We don't wear them. No one wears them outside. CDC says not to wear them outside. You should not have that and to sneak that in. And then also you guys need to think about the discrimination part, just like they said. How can you say that if you're non-vaccinated or vaccinated, getting the test? Everyone can spread it, the same exact, everyone gets the symptoms. It doesn't matter if you're vaccinated or not vaccinated. It is proven. There are 3 studies already out saying, especially the one from Israel, if you are non-vaccinated, you are actually more healthier. But that all gets pushed under the rug. All right, so you guys need to look at different things and stand up for the people who will need it.
Thank you. All right. So the board tonight does have a closed session in accordance with... Okay, and then we're going to reach the 20-minute limit for the topic, and we're going to stop.
Hi, I just had a couple comments. I find it interesting that the gentleman over here continues to doodle and be disrespectful and not look at people when they're speaking. And the only other point that I wanted to make is, do you see that there's a disconnect? And this is to the assistant superintendent. Do you notice that there's a huge disconnect between you and the people in your town as you're going on and on about how happy and excited you are about the golf outing, when you have parents who are very concerned that their kids are not in school for some stupid trumped up reason so you can get the numbers higher at the health department. And the Illinois Health Department guidelines were not followed. It said if there's an exposure and both people are masked, there does not need to be quarantine. And that still has happened. There's also the right to remain in school where the kids could be tested at day 1, 3, 5, and 7, so they could remain in school. That did not happen. And we were told it was because there's not enough staff. Well, that's really funny because you're wanting everybody to opt in for daily testing, but yet when you have kids who are singled out and quarantined because of close exposure, even though they had masks on, there's not a soul to be found to administer that test to one child at day 1, 3, 5, and 7, as the Illinois public health guidelines require for them to remain in school. So when you sit up there and you talk about all these things that you personally, ma'am, are so excited about, the golf outing, and all these things that you said that the school district is doing, you're not doing them. You're reading what you might want to be doing or you've thought up in your head that you're doing, but that in reality did not translate to what happened to my grandson and many other kids out here who have been quarantined for no reason. Healthy kids who are not in school, who are at home. So you know what? For every one of you who don't seem to really care at all you care about is that we have our mask on and that we sit down and be quiet and that we stay back here far away and below all of you. Shame on you. Shame on you.
Okay, that concludes public comment. We do have a closed session tonight in accordance with the Illinois Open Meetings Act, Section 2C1. We do not anticipate any action after closed session, and because of that, after the vote to go into closed session, the recording of tonight's meeting will be concluded. So I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Said aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Bob? Bob, are you? Oh, he said aye.
And Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Motion carries